What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Angelo podcast. I'm here with my boy Matt. Matt is actually a ex-consultant at Deloitte as well as Boston Consulting Group, and he's going into venture capital now. He's actually also my classmate at UCLA Anderson. Matt, welcome to the Angelo podcast. How's it going, brother?
Thanks, Angelo. Good.
Good to see you. Good to see you. So I've been actually trying to get Matt on the podcast for such a long time, man. He is probably one of the most kind of smartest and experienced people I know, especially in the realm of consulting. A lot of people want to kind of get into that consulting field, and he's been at Deloitte as well as Boston Consulting Group, two of the biggest consulting firms. So Matt, I want to actually start with consulting, right? Mm-hmm. You mentioned you started your career at Accenture, another huge consulting firm. We had Ryan on the previous podcast talk about his time at Accenture. So why don't you tell us about how you got started in consulting? How did you get that role at Accenture?
Sure. So, well, thanks for the nice words, first of all. Really appreciate that. That's very gratuitous of you. So I got started at Accenture when I was in New York. Before I moved to LA and started at UCLA, I was living in New York City, and I was working for a SaaS startup, which, SaaS stands for software as a service. And naturally, in professional environment in Manhattan, you start meeting people who are, go-getters and who are really obsessed with their careers. And naturally, through one way or the other, I heard about consulting. I heard about the lifestyle, the travel, the exposure to different projects, the different industries, to different executives across like organizations. And so I kind of got obsessed with it, started doing a lot of research and meeting people in the industry. And then from there, I just started applying. And then I got into Accenture for an interview. I just prepared for like 2 weeks straight after work every day. And that process was like, at the time, 7 or 8 different steps, including what's called a skills-based interview where they grill you, behavioral interview, a project, and then a final MD sign-off. And then, that's how I got my start in consulting.
That's crazy. So what was the application process like at Accenture? And then what role did you kind of come into? Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so at Accenture, they're like a massive organization. They actually employ, at the time, I don't know if it's the same, but it's probably similar, around 500,000 people around the world.
Wow, that's crazy.
They have deployment centers like in India and like other places as well that has a lot of headcount. But for the Accenture application process, like any major corporation, you need to make sure you have those keywords in your resume. You need to make sure you're highlighting relevant skills and then kind of consultify your resume. Because a consulting resume is very different than, if you were like a PM at a tech company.
Yeah. Can you talk about that consulting resume? I have a lot of undergrad friends here at UCLA and as well as grad school friends at UCLA who want to kind of get into consulting. How did you construct your resume to make sure that the people at Accenture see that this is a profile we want to interview?
For sure. So I first looked at the job description, and that's really like a North Star, like in all my applications.
Yeah.
It tells you how to do the job and like exactly what they're looking for, obviously. But beyond that, like I learned from people in consulting what they look for, and that's like leadership, ability to operate independently and without much instruction in highly unstructured and ambiguous environments. So I tried to inject that experience into my resume and like my, descriptions of like different accomplishments. And then that's another thing is to make each line of your resume accomplishment oriented, as people have heard 1,000 times, and have like key KPIs and results in there.
Got it. Thank you. Can you talk about, and you don't have, if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to disclose, but who was like your first client, and then what did you guys work on on Accenture? Because during my time at Alpha at Cloud, we always hired Accenture to help out with like the process overview flows and then building out like kind of approval processes for like corporate real estate. But who's your first client, and then what did you kind of do?
That's funny because my first role was like a process designer.
Oh, that's so funny, dude.
Operations role. I lived in Visio.
Visio. That's so funny.
Like creating like 200-page process flows. And I'm not even sure anyone actually read. But
the client's like, good.
Yeah. Oh, it meets the requirement. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
But the first client, I can share, is Morgan Stanley.
Wow.
And I say in New York for this one. I didn't travel for my first role, but they had 2 major offices, one downtown and then one in Midtown.
Yeah.
Just of like thousands of people. And for that, we are doing like process redesign and the Salesforce implementation for a wealth management product, which they later launched.
Which they later launched. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. And then the wealth management product, was that for high net worth individuals? Did they kind of give you details on like, hey, this is the product we're building? What was that like?
Yeah, like in a lot of the materials they provided and that were circulating internally, they had personas of the people that would be using this platform.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time I came across the acronym Henry. High earners, not rich yet.
Yeah. Over that.
And they had different like customer like personas and profiles for what these people would do, like their jobs, like where they live, etc.
That's pretty cool. Can you kind of go over working at Accenture? How do they select which client you're going to actually work for? Because I'm assuming they kind of hire you on board. You're a general kind of consultant. And then as they find projects for you, how do they actually pick, hey, we want you for Morgan Stanley? Why do they pick you?
So every consulting firm I know of internally has a like portal and like a social network, for lack of a better term, to where you like, you fill out your skills, your experiences, past projects you've been on, and whoever's staffing that project will try to find someone with relevant and appropriate past experience and skills.
Okay.
But it's always on you at the end of the day. No one's going to reach out and be responsible for you to get on project. You need to get on the project, because at the end of the year, you're evaluated by how often you are chargeable, which is called a utilization rate internally.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for like a consultant level at the time, it was 90%. So I had to be on a project 90% of the time to meet the criteria.
Wow. So what was that other 10% then? Was it kind of finding the project to meet that criteria?
Yeah, they give the 10% for a little leeway in getting staffed, as well as firm contributions.
Got it.
And that can be like working on research, like all these consulting firms, they use it as like a sales generation tool to publish like thoughts and like point of views.
Mm-hmm.
So you can contribute to that, or you can do something internally, like, organizing an event or something.
Got it. And then how long is a typical project at Accenture? And then kind of what do you see as like a success rate? Do you see a success rate as the client saying, hey, we want to re-up with you guys, or how does that work?
So the project varies. Typically on like strategy engagements, they can be anywhere from like a month to up to 6, but usually like a month to like 3.
Yeah.
But longer term, like, operations or technology implementations, those can be 6 months to even 2 years.
Wow.
And I think like once you reach like more senior levels, like the senior managers even, and obviously managing directors, the real like metric for success is the client signing you to do something else, like you alluded to.
Yeah.
But also them being happy at the end of the day.
Okay. That's so fascinating. Matt kind of touches something on that's really interesting. When I was managing the Accenture team at Alphabet, we would bring them on for about 6 months or so and then we kind of like evaluate this SOW or statement of work to make sure that they're actually hitting all those goals. And then that if it go well, we're going to re-up that, send them another SOW with a new purchase order and kind of get them on board again. So that's pretty cool to know that if you do well, come on board again, and then you kind of get to stay on the project. Yeah. And I've always had such a great experience with Accenture. Like everyone there like works so hard. And they were kind of, for us, we're very lucky that they were based in San Jose, like our Accenture team. So we could meet them locally, in person. It was always great. So that's great. You had an amazing time at Accenture. I kind of want to go over your transition now from Accenture over to, I believe, Boston Consulting Group.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are curious, BCG, Bain, McKinsey, they are like the most sought after consulting firms and one of the hardest ones to even get into. So Matt was actually able to get into Boston Consulting Group, BCG. Can you tell us about that experience? What was like interviewing for there? What was like applying?
For sure. So that's actually how I got out to LA from New York.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Originally, the job was posted in New York, but they moved the position to LA. And, once they offered me the role, I'm like, sure, I'll make it.
Yeah, man. I'm going to California. Did you go to undergrad in New York too?
No, I went to undergrad in Texas.
Okay.
University of Texas at Dallas.
No way. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's where I'm from originally.
Yeah.
Before going to New York from here. But how I got into BCG was they had like a division. It's now called BCGX, but at the time it was called BCG Digital Ventures. They have a really cool office in Manhattan Beach to where it's like, catered lunches, like multiple floors, like co-working spaces, like not far from the beach. But that process was, pretty similar to Accenture's as far as like the 6 or 7 rounds, talking to different people, skills-based, going over experiences. But for the final part of that, they actually flew me out to Manhattan Beach to do an in-person presentation.
Oh, cool.
And they gave me a project and gave me like it was 24 to like 48 hour turnaround. And I had to create like a deck and come up with like recommendations.
No way.
So it's kind of trial by fire. Like,
yeah. So that's actually how the Alpha interview was too for me, where we had to create our own deck, show a presentation of a certain project we did, how we implemented that. Can you talk about your experience with creating a deck and that interview process style?
Yeah, definitely. So luckily at that point, I was, I lived in PowerPoint. So creating decks is...
You're pretty good at it.
All the shortcuts. It's something I was like well-versed in. It was like a second language. So the deck creation was like pretty effortless for the most part. But what I tried to do was I tried to figure out what they were looking for.
Yeah.
Like, I get myself out of my perspective and think about like from the people in the room, what are they looking for? What's going to make me attractive to them? And how am I going to add value if I had to join their team? And so a lot of this was like just knowing about like key criteria like in customer experience, but also like new technologies.
Yeah.
And then also framing recommendations in a very digestible way to audiences. That's the challenge in consulting a lot is you have, complicated subject matter and you have to boil it down and you have to speak the language to people across different business departments.
Okay. Got it. Well, thank you for that. And then kind of want to go into your time at BCG. Can you talk about who your client was or who you work with there? And then what did you do for them? And what was travel like for you for that?
So, it's pretty interesting you asked that, actually. So I joined in 2019. COVID had shut down everything in 2020 was it March, I think?
I think so, yeah.
I think it was March. So I joined and I was traveling to Dallas for GameStop was the first.
No way. Oh, my God. I want to hear So for that years, GameStop was going crazy during COVID. It's actually, time of filming right now, it's May 29th, right? Last 2024. It kind of exploded again last week. Yeah. So tell us what you got.
Oh man, so this was before the stock craze during COVID.
Okay.
And we were there and just speaking, I'm not speaking for anyone else but myself.
Yeah.
But the writing was on the wall that GameStop was on the way out because, you had the game developers in the game and the platforms like PlayStation, Xbox. I'm not a gamer, but they started publishing directly, through the online
store.
Store. So you didn't have to go to GameStop to buy anything. And you didn't have to go through them even online to buy anything. You can just buy it directly from home on your device. So that took a big bite out of GameStop's revenue. And it also, I think, scared the executives and board members quite a bit. So they hired us to kind of get incremental revenue online, designing ways to pull in the customer and increase cross-selling and upselling through their e-commerce store.
Can I ask you a question about that? Why do companies go through consultants to kind of strategize and create new forms of revenue rather than going to their internal teams? What's the benefit?
That's a really good question. And I'm not going to give a super politically correct answer here. I'll be transparent. I mean, I'm not consulting anymore. But essentially, a lot of times they do that because they want an outside perspective. And they have relationships with managing directors and partners at firms, and they trust them to put a good team together. That is definitely part of the reason they bring people on. Another reason is also internally, if an executive, spearheads a project and it goes horribly for some reason, they're to blame at the end of the day. But if they hire BCG or Accenture, BCG and Accenture, we come in and make a recommendation. It doesn't go well. The executive at the end of the day could be like, well, this is what BCG said. It wasn't what I said. Yeah.
Got it. That is so fascinating.
Yeah, there's a lot of internal politics at play, which, I was exposed to were pretty interesting at times.
Yeah, that's so fascinating because I've always wondered that, right? Because there's so many smart people internally and you vet these people more so than even vet external consulting firms. And then I didn't know that, I guess up there, it's hey, in case this fails, I have like kind of like a little scapegoat per se. Yeah.
Yeah, and the animosity among like staff is like palpable. Like I understood it at the time because like, well, who are these people coming in telling us what to do? We see it every day. Why is their like point of view and like perspective being elevated compared to ours?
Yeah.
And like that was an interesting dynamic when you had to work with like lower level employees and that sort of thing.
Yeah, talk about that because I'm assuming when you're working with a client, yes, you're working with some managers, but you're probably also working with a lot of individual contributors and just kind of learn what they're doing. What was that like?
So, a lot of times you have like a point person, like a VP or an executive, but as you mentioned, you'd work with individual contributors who were like, you know, an expert or who managed a certain process. And naturally, a lot of times they would be apprehensive to be like fully transparent or like be upright and be like super responsive when you had requests, like naturally, because like an outsider is like, you know, coming in and they're going to make these recommendations. But what I found is if you show that you respect their role and you understand that they have insights that you're not going to have and you're never going to have on that project because they're there, they're working, they've been there. And if you make that pretty like forthright, they're much more willing to work with you at the end of the day.
Oh, wow. So it's huge, your relationship within that. Can you talk about how you kind of structured your day to meet with the individual contributors to understand the process and build like recommendations?
It really depends on like the project. Like the project can be different from like one to another, but typically like, especially like on a Fortune 500 like strategy project or something, you'd be meeting with people from like 9 to 5 every single day.
Wow.
So you have meetings like pretty much back to back. Like I can probably count like in one time, like, or on one hand, the amount of times I took a lunch, because usually you're working during lunch and you can't really do like work a lot of times until like Friday or till like after hours when you're done with the meetings. So you're meeting with people throughout the entire day.
And were you flying a lot to see the client actually, or was it mainly kind of remote from your office?
So I was flying a bunch before COVID. Like it was Monday through Thursday every like year. And then COVID hit and completely changed the game.
Yeah.
I know some people have had like different experiences than me, but like after COVID, my travel was like dramatically cut down.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it was mainly like, hey, we were able to establish a process doing everything remote. No need to spend the money to fly you out, house you. Is that kind of like the process there?
Yeah, exactly. And the client also pays for your travel and they know how much they're paying for your travel.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a good cost savings. That's probably a lot better, to be honest with you. I feel like in this remote world, it's better for us to just do everything remotely rather than paying another expense for your consultant.
For sure. Yeah. And like different executives have like different points of view on that. Some like value remote work and the cost savings, and others like they need to be here in person. That's how like we get that extra value.
Okay, that is pretty interesting. That's really cool. I didn't even know that. And then I want to ask you too, like, feel free to we can cut this out too if you don't want to talk about it. What's the salaries like for a consultant? Because I know for an MBA consultant, a lot of people are making, for people who are graduating UCLA, they're telling me they're getting like $200,000 offers for consulting.
Yeah, I would expect that now, like post MBA for sure. Usually like at firms, they have like an analyst, senior analyst, consultant, senior consultant. People who don't have like previous consulting experience and go into a firm, they'll join as a senior consultant, which is pretty much like just reserved for like MBA grads. Definitely at Accenture, that was my experience. And at BCG, it was like that at the time for sure. And yeah, you could expect to make around like $200K like base salary.
Wow, that's crazy.
And signing bonuses vary. Actually, Accenture strategy has been known to give really good starting bonuses to like top MBA like candidates. And they like give like better starting bonuses than like BCG and Bain in some cases.
No way. So, because for big tech, right, everything's broken down with like base salary, then you get a bonus, sign-on bonus if you negotiate, and then equity. So, is Accenture Consulting as well as BCG, like Deloitte, are they all kind of like salary, bonus, sign-on bonus, and then bonus and then sign-on bonus? Is that kind of how it works too, or is there equity portion involved?
There's no equity portion. They have like some good like benefits that vary from firm to firm, but a lot of it is bonus. Bonus is a huge portion of it, like the more senior you get.
Yeah.
And then salary.
So,
But yeah, that equity component would be nice to have.
yeah. That I asked that because like a lot of the people we've interviewed, right, especially if someone who's in investment banking, right, a good chunk of their kind of total compensation comes from that end of year bonus. Sometimes it's like double or even more than their actual salary. Yeah, which is interesting, kind of in the more like consulting and the investment banking and finance kind of realm.
Yeah, I would say that's way more common in finance and more senior roles in consultant. But if you're like senior consultant or below, your bonus should be lower than your
outside
Yeah.
guy. Thank you. Yeah, it's always good to talk about the money kind of component behind all these jobs, because these jobs, for those of you that are curious, they're extremely sought after. And then you got to realize also you're competing with like someone like Matt, tons of experience, went to school at UCLA. Also, like there's someone from Harvard, from Stanford, who are all kind of competing to get into BCG, to McKinsey, or from Wharton. So these jobs are very sought after and they pay extremely well. That's why we kind of want to talk about that. So we go over the amazing time at BCG, one of the hardest firms to get into. So props to Matt. That's just not easy at all.
Thank you.
Shout out to him. Like, to even get an interview was crazy. To like actually get the job, even crazier. And then to work with GameStop, which is like probably a hot client, especially back then, especially now.
Let's not make that the title of the video.
We'll like this time. We got to gas up Burble because we're proud of him. So let's talk about going into UCLA. What made you want to get an MBA from UCLA Anderson?
So I originally wanted to get an MBA before I got into consulting. To get into consulting originally, and also to like have more career opportunities as a whole.
Yeah.
But it later, like when I got into consulting and like I kind of dropped the idea of an MBA for a little while, and then I revisited it, and I really just wanted to get it for the experience, the additional like educational opportunity, as well as the ability to open up future opportunities beyond consulting.
Yeah.
So it kind of like evolved over time, really, like organically, I'd say. And by the time I was in LA, it's like, it's really now or never.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get like an MBA. So
that is pretty cool. And you guys are going to see later in the episode, we're going to talk about kind of the opportunities Matt has gotten during his time at UCLA, and then like kind of where he's going now because of like the networks that he built at UCLA and the experience there too. So from his MBA. So stay tuned. I want to go into your MBA, right? How do you think it's kind of helped you in your career? Do you think it's helped you kind of like get more opportunities? Did you learn a lot about business side of things from the MBA? Because we have a lot of classmates who are from tech, who are from like in the field of medicine, who want to learn more about business. So they came here to study with us.
Yeah, for me, I would say the biggest value is the added network. Which, like, if you get an MBA, you really need to leverage that to get the most value out of it. I
think so too.
Because the network opens doors for you. Yeah. Because when you're reaching out to someone like in an industry you're trying to get into, or like a job or company you're trying to get into, you have to like influence them. Like, why do I want to talk to this person? Exactly. And if they're a UCLA alumni or an Anderson MBA, they're gonna be like, oh, well, we have this in common. So yeah, of course I'll connect with them.
Yeah.
So I would say like that's the biggest value driver I've got from it. Of course, like, you know, learning about like, you know, things I probably wouldn't have investigated myself, especially like in like finance or operations more thoroughly, is great. But the network, hands down, is like the most important part, I would say.
Yeah, I have to agree with Matt there, right? Think of it as a school, right? A lot of it, you do like learn kind of like business, like theory, processes, like supply chain, finances, right? A lot of that stuff you can learn on the job. Like a lot of, I think what I've learned at UCLA has been great, but all the hardcore stuff I actually learned working. But the network is what really sets you apart, because you're able to meet someone in venture capital, meet someone in consulting, who can be your referral, who can be your point of contact. I remember at Alphabet, there's a couple of UCLA MBAs like on my team or on the team near me, and I was able to really kind of get whatever I needed for a certain project, get their ear, figure out how to build things more, because we had that UCLA MBA connection.
Mm-hmm. And like the older I've got, and like the more I've slowly matured.
Man, you're very mature, man.
I've realized like it's really like who you know is like a major player in like future success, because like, you know, people and like good people will make you much more successful and open doors you can't possibly do by yourself.
Yeah.
I think like anything of value or anything that's like hard and has a great payoff requires the help of other people. And that's something I've continually like learned and, I've doubled down on as of recently.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. You can't build anything great without other people. Like this is all a team effort. And you guys see this a lot at UCLA with all your projects, every class. If you ever notice, if you ever get an MBA or if you go to business school, everything is all group projects because they know everything in the real world is a group project, right?
Yeah, it
is. So that's kind of interesting too. And then it's all case studies too, right? Because a lot of the case studies are what actually happened in actual businesses. What can you learn from it? How can we re-implement it and make it better?
Yeah,
so that is pretty good there. Matt, so let's talk about like the opportunities the MBA has presented to you.
Sure.
How I know Matt actually during his time at UCLA, he got an offer at Deloitte, correct?
Yeah.
So can we talk about that? What was that interview process like? How did everything go there?
So after my stint at BCG, Deloitte actually reached out to me, I think via LinkedIn or recruiter did or something, and offered me a manager role with their customer strategy practice.
Yeah, we were in class. Remember when you interviewed, you were like, "Hey, Roy's got this interview." You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you. Let's go."
Yeah. But they reached out. It was much shorter than like previous rounds. I think a lot of companies, in my experience, have been cutting down the amount of rounds they do because it's so exhausting. And then if you have like competitive candidates for like jobs, you're gonna, you want to get them in quicker than later.
Yeah.
And then you're just pushing those out because you have to schedule these rounds to get the people available and find a time for them to meet. So it was like only like 4 or 5 rounds.
That's really good. And it's like 6 or 7.
Yeah. And then they got me on board pretty quickly. I went to San Francisco for like a week for orientation.
Okay.
And then like got on my project the very next week.
Pretty cool. Talk about those 4 or 5 rounds. Was the first round just a recruiter screen and then hiring manager and then panel?
Yeah, the first was just like the recruiter screen. Then from there, I think I met with a manager, and then the rounds after that was like 2 MDs.
2 MDs, 2 managing directors.
There was no project or anything for Deloitte.
Okay. Yeah. Was it all behavioral questions? Kind of like, well, can you tell me at a time you did this? Can you tell me at a time you did this? Talk about your previous projects.
I think maybe the one who was a manager or senior manager was behavioral, but the ones with like the partners and the MDs, that was all experience based. Like what projects you've been on, like what roles did you have, like what challenges and projects did you have to like deal with?
I always kind of found it fascinating when they bring out that senior leadership, like those MDs, the VPs, right? They just want to hear your work experience and see if you're competent enough to do the job. And then I think the fact too that Matt was coming from like Accenture, coming from BCG, coming from UCLA, the #1 public school in the world, it's like he had all these check marks and he was extremely competent too when he interviewed because he's done this before. So it wasn't scary for them to bring on someone like him to kind of do well. So that's very exciting. Can you talk about, I want to ask this too, like what was negotiation like for these jobs? Like, were you able to negotiate for kind of higher compensation? How can you give any advice for our viewers?
Yeah. So it's best to kind of know like what flexibility and like room there is to negotiate in the first place. Like there's a bunch of platforms out there like Glassdoor, Fishbowl is like really popular now.
This is great advice. Keep going.
Yeah. And then all these others, and you can actually like find a range because like if you find like publicly available information that's not like user submitted, like it can be like this is a range, which isn't always accurate and always changes. But a lot of that user submitted like data, like on Fishbowl and like Glassdoor, you can really see what you're working with. And it varies by region. Yeah. So for instance, someone like in New York or LA can get paid more than someone in Dallas or someone in Orlando, for instance. So, using all of those like different data points and kind of like proximating like what you can get, you can like request more. And I always like, in my sort of like mindset and my strategy going in was always asking for a tad bit more than I think I could possibly get because they can always come down and like, you can be satisfied because, you got the upper
level. Yeah. And that's super important. Thanks for going to that, Matt. Matt touched on really 2 important things, right? Look at other websites, kind of career sites where they have the actual role and how much you're getting paid. identify the market you're in. If you're in San Francisco, if you're in Los Angeles, if you're in New York, you are in a premium market. So make sure you command premium pay or salary. If you're in kind of a smaller market like Texas or Orlando, where it's a lower cost of living, you will get paid less, but you still can negotiate. These big firms like BCG, like Bain, like Accenture, like any of these big companies, they have a budget to pay you more. So don't be afraid to negotiate. What I learned through negotiation is that most of these big companies allow 2 or 3 rounds of negotiation. I don't know how it is like in startups or smaller companies, but most big companies get 2 or 3 rounds. And at the end of the day, they've already put so much time and effort in you where they have 5, 6 rounds interviewing. You've met the MD, you've met the whole team. They want to hire you. So you have the point of leverage to negotiate for more. And you want to be sure that this is where you have the most power. So always negotiate when you are accepting an offer from a major firm. Hopefully even smaller companies too, they let you do this. But this is very, very important. So thanks for touching upon that, Matt.
That's a good point, yeah.
Yeah. So talk about Deloitte as a manager. What was that like? Did you have direct reports? What was your projects?
So I was on some longer term projects, some retail companies, some like, I don't want to say the name, but like a channel marketing company.
Yeah, don't.
That's really big.
Keep it.
Yeah, is this more recent? So, yeah, a lot of that is like you manage like, consultants and analysts, and you have to, be responsible for the work product at the end of the day. And as a consultant, you can completely own deliverables, but as a manager, you're responsible for multiple deliverables, and then also like delivering them to the client and like owning that portion of the project. Like at that point, like the senior manager or managing director shouldn't be super involved in the nitty gritty of like deliverables. Like you're the manager. It's like, it has to be great. It has to be polished. And like, you have to make sure like it's good for the client.
Yeah. That is interesting. Was it more stressful being an individual contributor or a manager? Because they're both different responsibilities.
I actually don't like being a manager that much.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear that a lot too from people who a lot of my peers.
Yeah, it's like some people love it, and some people are like really great at it. There's a lot of people, it takes them a while to get good at it.
Yeah.
I've experienced both sides of that. I've been improving as a manager and haven't been that great.
Yeah.
And I've had managers who are obviously like learning as they're going along. And you have to like be a people person, and you have to be direct, and you have to deal with very uncomfortable things a lot of times, like as a people manager, that you don't as like an individual contributor.
As I see.
I could have said that a little bit more clear.
No, that was great. It's fascinating you say that because I remember at Meta, I had a teammate, right? And he was at Meta for 10 years, something really long. And he was a smart guy. Like he went to Harvard, became a product manager, and he was there for 10 years. And he stayed at L4, L5, which is like kind of like a terminal level at big tech, where it's just like you're a senior contributor and you're an individual contributor, you don't manage anyone. And I asked him, like, why did you stay at this level? Usually 10 years, 15 years, you're a VP already, right? He just said, like, I just like working on my own stuff, and I didn't want to worry about anything else. I knew this was like just a job for me. I was like, okay, this guy's 100% honest with you. And managing was hard. Like, I remember having one-on-ones with my manager at Google, and they would tell me, she's like, honestly, I just wish I was an IC, because this is like so much stress for like probably like an extra 20 or 30K, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, in California, so you're taxed like 40%. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I appreciate the honesty too. And when I was like kind of managing people for the consulting at Accenture, it was stressful, man.
Yeah.
It was like hard getting everyone to come together. It was hard getting all the projects in, and then like talking to your senior leadership. Oh, we did this. But some people love it. So say love you, right?
Yeah.
Can we talk about you transitioning from this amazing consulting background, as well as your time at UCLA? How did you transfer over to what's it called, to venture capital? Because it's kind of a new avenue now, right?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I've like known about venture capital for a while, but it seemed like so like out of reach and so abstract. It's like I can't possibly approach that or find a way to get in. And then through UCLA, I started meeting a lot of venture capitalists. Like LA actually has a pretty healthy like venture capital and like startup slash tech. Yeah.
Yeah.
Silicon Beach. Yeah. And, meeting people who are NBC, who are UCLA alumni that come to the school.
Yeah.
Like the Entrepreneurship Association, for example, put on a really good event last year called the VC Roundtable.
No way.
And it was full of like UCLA alumni who were like, partners at firms in the area. So I like met a lot of people at that event. Was great. And then through meeting people at UCLA, I'd get introduced to people outside of UCLA that were like good connections, and just like, try to get in front of as many people as possible and learn about like their thoughts on like new technologies and startups that are exciting and what they value in finding people to work for them. And then just applying like everywhere I possibly could. And then reaching out and having conversations with as many people as I possibly could.
Can you talk about that process, applying and then reaching out? Was this through LinkedIn, through Twitter? Because we were talking about before how Twitter is huge in the venture capital space.
Yeah, pretty much like any channel I could utilize. LinkedIn, definitely. Twitter, for sure. Or X.
X, my bad, X.
Yeah, whatever it's called. And yeah, VCs are obsessed with Twitter because I think VCs love hearing the sound of their own voice. and they love giving perspectives. I mean, that's part of the job. But yeah, reaching out to those people wherever you can. And a good strategy I've learned from other people is to share like insights or like relevant companies or technologies of a topic they're experts in or talking about. For instance, like if someone's like really big in real estate technology and they're talking about like, LiDAR technology to like map spaces, you could be like, well, I know the startup. Actually, a guy is a founder at UCLA with me. He's working on LiDAR technology in real estate. And you send them a company and they're like, okay, great. And they can have a dialogue with you at that point. And they ultimately see like this person can provide value. This person can like find opportunities and put them in front of me.
Oh, that's fascinating. Wow, that's so cool. And I was telling Matt, actually, like he knows so much in consulting. He knows so much kind of like, and he's going to the VC space that I think if he starts kind of making content on Twitter or X or on YouTube about what he knows, everything consulting, I feel like you do amazing on social media. And I think you do amazing like sourcing more deals, because I feel like a lot of founders will find you like, oh man, this guy has big consulting experience.
Yeah.
He's seen how to kind of create new avenues to generate revenue for the firm, for the company. Maybe we should start getting, maybe we should actually talk to this VC and like try and get funding from the first Series A, B, C, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I started like getting like obsessed with like BC when trying to break in. I kind of knew like the odds were against me.
Yeah.
And one strategy I did come across was to break into VC is to become a like subject matter expert or a person who has like an online identity.
Yeah.
Like, there's people out there who like have a blog or website who publish like, thought pieces or like research they independently do. And that gets in front of other VCs and other founders and people in the tech industry. And from there, their name kind of like bubbles up.
Yeah.
And, like that's how they've got in. I've heard a couple of stories from like YouTube, like Twitter /X, wherever else, of people doing that.
Isn't it crazy though now how like in today's day and age, personal branding and personal marketing of yourself is just so important, especially in the like professional and career world, especially something like VC when you have so many like competitors out there who want to get into this. Because for those of you who are curious, usually how VC works is that you kind of get into investment banking, you do the sell side, and then eventually you move over to the buy side, which is like venture capital, private equity. And then it's also very competitive too, because you're going against MBAs from like Harvard, Stanford, and UCLA. So thank you for sharing that insight for how to break into this world.
For sure. And like that's like, I'm not the best at like branding myself, and it's something I'm trying to get better at and improve on. But that's also like been a common byline in my career, I found out, because, my first like job in consulting at Accenture, the CEO at the time, his motto was be famous for something. And like, essentially saying like brand yourself, be known in your practice, be known among the like larger organization for what your skills are, what value you could bring to a project. And that's been like a common like lesson I've been learning throughout my career.
Wow, that is fascinating. That be famous, brand yourself, kind of be known for something. And that's something they don't tell you. Like when you start your career in corporate America, I learned this at Google, was that perception is reality. That's what my manager always told me. Perception is reality. So even though you may be doing the most amazing work, if no one knows about it, no one knows about it, and you're not going to get the fruits of your labor, because how are we going to give you your flowers if you don't market your brand yourself? I remember I had this coworker. She progressed from L4 to L6, which is very, very high in about a year, because she branded herself so well to the entire organization. And Matt's doing the same thing right now, where he's branding himself to the venture capital community, so that way when he starts this role, he can source more deals. He can be seen as a BC who's extremely competent and can help grow and build companies. Because he's done this so far with consulting. He's gone to UCLA. He's gone to these top tier firms. So he's extremely competent. He knows what he's doing. So I'm very excited for you to share your kind of your knowledge with everyone.
Yeah, that was a great point you made. You're a great speaker, by the way.
Oh, appreciate you, dude.
You're very articulate. I need to get Angelo.
You're the man too, bro.
But like, yeah, that's so true. It's like, is in a corporate world, like you think it's like a meritocracy. Like you think you do good and you're going to be good because like you're doing good work. But perception is really so important. And I've been taught that or told that from like multiple people, like in consulting, like throughout like the firms, like perception is everything because it precedes you. It helps you get staffed on projects. It helps you like, tell your story at the end of the year. This is what I accomplished. This is why I should get promoted or get a bonus.
Mm-hmm. Love it, man. So it's kind of like it's rampant in the corporate world. They don't tell you this when you start your career, but hopefully you hear it from me and Matt that perception is reality. Brand, market yourself well. I know it's very scary at first when you sound like you're boasting, but you're not. You're taking care of yourself and your career. Matt, appreciate you so much for coming at the end of the podcast. Mm-hmm. And I just want to ask you one last final question that we ask all our guests.
Sure.
What is one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Oh, man. One piece of advice. I would say, to kind of like round this out, invest in relationships. I think when I was younger, I really just tried to get better talent-wise or more knowledgeable in like different like areas, like provide like value and like kind of like grow my career. But that needs to be like modulated with like investing in people and relationships. Because if you can't be a trusted advisor to people in your organization or clients or whatever, you're never going to get to the next level.
That's beautiful. Invest in people and relationships. And I guarantee you that is probably one of the best things you can do. It's extremely scary at first, right? Investing in like people trying to kind of develop relationships, but it's 100% worth it at the end, because at the end of the day, we've realized working in corporate America, going to UCLA, is that people love working with people that they enjoy.
Yeah.
Right. We're not gonna want to work with people who is like just a pain or a hassle to work with. We're gonna like try and do projects with people we care about, and then people who will be kind of a pleasure to work with and who also work hard and are very competent. So yeah. Appreciate you, Matt. We're gonna share all Matt's links down below in the description section. He has a Twitter. I think we're almost at 1,900, but I think it's 2,000 subs on X.
Yeah, so knocking at the door of 2,000.
Yeah, I get there at 2,000, so we'll get Matt on there too.
I'm like one of those creators. Click here.
Yeah. So we're gonna include that. I'm excited. I told Matt, I was like, dude, you gotta start a YouTube channel because you know so much. Like, and there's so many people who would love to hear your story, because if you like ever Google like. It's not like you don't find a lot of people talk about their time at Deloitte or BCG, Accenture, right? And those are like the companies everyone wants to work at. You have competency, you have the backing, you put the work in too. So I'd love to hear that. So if Matt starts his own channel, we're gonna put that there too. But for sure, we'll have his Twitter down below. Matt's gonna be going into VC sometime soon, very, very soon. So very excited for that. Hopefully when he gets on board, we'll film again, like figure out how his experience is. Yeah, and we're gonna get on the podcast again. So very excited for that. Any last words, Matt, before we close out the podcast?
No, man, just thanks for your time, and I look forward to watching this and the other videos.
Of course, my brother. Appreciate you. Jello family, thank you so much for watching this podcast. Matt was an amazing guest. I hope you guys learned a lot about consulting, about venture capital, about his time at UCLA as an MBA student. So we're very excited to have him aboard again eventually a bit later down the road. But Jello family, please like, comment, and subscribe. All of Matt's links are down below. And always, have an amazing day. Peace.